Hey guys! Today we're going to go over a true crime case, and I'm sitting on my bathroom floor because it has the best lighting, so let's sit on my bathroom floor and talk about crime. Sorry. Alright, the case we're going to go over today is Natalie Bolinger, a 19-year-old female from Colorado. On December 28th, she went missing. She left her house around 12:30. The last contact anyone had with her was 1 p.m. via text message, and by 3:30 that day, her boyfriend that she lived with contacted the cops, reported her missing. He also reported the fact that she had his gun, which of course is a very unsettling fact. Now, she is, as a 19-year-old female, she did have problems in the past. She had, problems with like suicide thoughts and depression, which a lot of people do suffer and deal with. And she also did have problems with past drug use. Again, a lot of people suffer and deal with this. Now, unfortunately, on December 29th, the next day, they did find her body. At the time, they did not release whatsoever how she was, how she was deceased, but just that she was deceased. Now, a lot of things point to one person as being this main suspect, and a good amount of people 100% believe this guy was the one that did it. This man is named Sean Schwartz. Sean Schwartz is a homeless man that Natalie met when she was about 14 years old, and they've formed a friendship. And this happens a lot. I feel like when you're around that age, like 14, 15, and especially when you're someone like Natalie, who seems, from what I've read, to be a very open and kind person, you meet a lot of characters, and you are very trusting of these characters. Now, Sean has a lot of mental illnesses, and I feel like that's why a lot of people have jumped to the conclusion of, well, that and some of his actions, of him being the murderer. Now, they were friends for a few years. From what I have read, and this is no disrespect to the family, but it seems like Natalie had a troublesome growing up, childhood, teenage years. And they had that in common. They also had in common, a few other things, and they talked, they shared stories, she helped him with rides, all that stuff. Now, as part of his mental illness, though, he was very obsessive, and unfortunately that became a problem. It went from, obsessive to, it went from, too many text messages to, she decided to move to Virginia. Now, her father lives in Colorado, just like where she lived with her boyfriends, and her mother lived in Virginia. And she decided to move in with her mother in Virginia. And this man that, they, were just friends, drove all the way from Colorado to Virginia out of nowhere to see her. So understandably, this freaked her out a little bit, and she sort of cut contact with him. She was like, we can't be friends. And this set him into sort of like a tailspin. He went from, being a little obsessive in a nice way to sort of like leaving a lot of very negative, angry posts on his Facebook, to leaving messages for her and her parents, her friends, everyone about, about wanting to like shoot her and hurt her. Basically a lot of weird things. He slept outside her work for 4 weeks straight. He went in front of her house with his car and just laid on the horn for hours until the cops came. On December 14th, actually, she actually got a protection order against him. So understandably, you get a protection order against someone, and then, less than a week or so later, you are found murdered, they're going to point to you. Now, after she is found murdered, he also went on Facebook Live and made some very disturbing videos, which I will link below because, yeah, I am not surprised that people thought it was him, but it wasn't him. About 2 days ago, a guy named Joseph Lopez was actually charged with her murder because he confessed to her murder. Now, what happened is, on the day that she disappeared, on the 28th, they got her phone records. And on her phone records, she had 111 text messages between her and another phone number. And the other phone number was Joseph Lopez. And 111 text messages is an odd thing upon itself. Now, when the cops went to his job to talk to him, he knew what it was about already. He was like, oh, it's about the girl. They were like, we're here to talk about, a tragedy that happened near you. And he was like, oh, the girl from Craigslist. So they were like, So what his story is, and he's had a few versions of it, but pretty much his story is he was on Craigslist looking through the women seeking men's ads, and there was an ad saying, I want to put a hit out on myself. And like any rational person, I guess, he decided to contact this person via email first. And basically she wanted to kill herself, but she didn't want to do it herself, so she wanted someone else to help her. According to him, at least. So he said that he has suffered from depression, and he also has like an app that like he has like a fantasy life in. So he played this like part of this like, psycho killer guy, and he said that he was going to, meet up with her and try to talk her out of it. Okay. So on the 28th, they have 111, text messages between each other. They have not released the text messages, but they do say that there was nothing that involved suicide in any of these text messages. So, yeah. So the first story that he says is that he picked her up on the 28th. They drove around to a few areas. She couldn't decide where she wanted to end her life, I guess, at, and he dropped her off at a gas station near her house. Now, this is when the cops informed him that your cell phone has GPS on it, so they knew exactly where he was. So of course, story changes now. Now it's, well, they were driving around and they ended up at the street that she was found on, and she ran out of the car, he ran after her, and she shot herself in the head. Now, that also doesn't come into play with what the autopsy has found, because the autopsy has found that it was the gun was 1 to 3 feet away from her when shot. And I'm sorry, but that's almost impossible. That's a pretty far range to reach. So of course he had to change his story again. Now, a little statistic here for people who don't know. Women rarely use guns to kill themselves. Men tend to use guns to kill themselves, and women tend to use things like drugs. They tend to do a less painful way to end their lives. Now, when she was found, she was also found with a quote-unquote lethal amount of heroin in her system. Now, she did struggle in the past with things like meth use and heroin use. So what someone considers a lethal amount to one person might not be a lethal amount to a heavy user. Look at Kurt Cobain. That's the one thing you always hear about the Kurt Cobain suicide, is he had a lethal amount of heroin in his system. But if you use heroin all the time, well, it might not be lethal to him. And from what everything is at least said in this story and what has been reenacted, and even from what he has at least leaked that seems semi-plausible, there might have been heroin in her system. It might have been lethal to some, but it didn't seem like it was lethal to her. And that's why I have a theory about this case. We'll get to that in a second. So basically, he then said, well, he was trying to talk her out of it, but she was just insistent. This 5 foot, 120-pound girl was just insistent that he killed her. And instead of, taking her to a hospital or the police or doing anything that a rational human being would do, he killed her because she asked him to, which is still highly illegal, and he still deserves jail time forever. But basically what he said, his last story that he's sticking to now, we'll see if this changes, but right now what he's sticking to is they went to the field, she wanted to kneel down, and she wanted to be shot in the back of the head because she didn't want to see the gun, which I find, again, weird, because, if you were that determined to kill yourself, why would a gun now kill you when you knew you were going to get shot anyway? They kneeled down, prayed together, and then he shot her. And then he freaked out, grabbed her purse, and ran away. Okay. Now here's the thing. If someone wants to kill themselves, a few things come into play usually. They usually don't tell people. They usually don't want a lot of people to know. And a lot of people you would think would not want someone else to be involved in it, especially someone they don't know, because why would you want someone else to go to jail for something that you're choosing? That doesn't make much sense. And from what I've read about this girl, she doesn't seem like the kind of person that would want to just destroy someone's life over nothing. But irregardless of any of that, that's definitely a crazy twist of the story. I definitely believe, regardless if she chose it or not, even though I do not believe the whole I chose the story, I believe that there's something else involved in this story. It's still murder, and I still believe that he should go to jail for, the rest of his life. Now, like I said, she had a lethal amount of heroin in her system. What I personally believe happened in this story is, and this is just my theory, I'm not a cop, I am just a random stranger. My idea of what possibly happened is she went on Craigslist, unfortunately, to look for drugs. Sadly enough, a lot of people go online to look for drugs. Being someone who has a history with drugs, that is dumb as hell, guys. Cops are always trailing things like Craigslist for drug users. Don't do it. And don't do it because things like this can happen. I feel like she went on Craigslist to look for drugs. He contacted her because somehow she found that heroin, contacted her, and that's how they got talking to each other. And that's also why she took the gun, because of someone she didn't know. Now, also though, the 111 text messages, just a random note to anyone who happens to be a drug user. If you contact someone, don't go online to look for dealers anyway. But if you contact someone and they talk to you for that long, 111 text messages in a few hour period, don't meet up with them, because most drug dealers don't give two fucks about talking to you. They want your money, they're going to give you the product, and you can leave in the end. So if they want to talk to you for that long, there might be something else involved in it. Yeah. So that's that there. Now, that's my little theory on what actually happens. I do not believe whatsoever that she wanted to kill herself. Now, that's the story, but I have my thoughts on the whole assisted suicide thing. So if you don't want to hear anything else about that, thanks for watching. Have a great day. But this is my theory that has nothing to do with the actual case. Assisted suicide. I do believe that assisted suicide should be, legal for certain reasons. Now, if I was told tomorrow that I have a terminal illness, and I have 6 months to live, and that 6 months is going to be horrendous. It's going to be intensely painful, ridiculous, horrible, and, you know, just horrible. I feel that I have every right to have a doctor help me end my life peacefully. Now, with things like depression, and I'm not trying to knock depression, act like it's not a, you know, a horrible illness, because for someone who suffers with it, it definitely is not an easy road to take. But it can be manageable with medication, with therapy, with a lot of various things. So it is not like a terminal illness. If I, for some reason, saw a ad on Craigslist for someone who wanted to kill themselves, the rational, normal human with a soul thing to do would be to, if you are not going to call the cops immediately, is to contact this person, you know, if you pick them up or what have you, to, you know, pretend you're going to kill them, take them to a hospital, take them to the cops, get them some help. Because a lot of times people who have survived their suicide attempt, I don't know why I survived, who have survived their suicide attempt, usually have regretted it. You know, it was a rash decision, if you will. So if you actually did want to help this person not harm themselves, and you didn't decide to just call the cops then, you would have picked them up and took them straight to the hospital or took them to the cops. She's 5'1" and 120 pounds. I don't see how she could have been intimidating and forced you to harm her. I feel this guy had some kind of ulterior motive. Be it that she was looking for drugs and he just, you know, wanted to find an easy target if you will, because, you know, when you are looking for drugs, you become an easy target because you get in a car with people that you never would, or talk to people you probably never would. I'm not really sure what the story behind it is, but I believe that assisted suicide should be legal to an extent when it becomes to things like terminal illnesses that are going to, you know, cause you nothing but torturous for the rest of your life, you know, for the rest of the time that you have. Like, the 6 months you have are going to be horrible. Yes. And it should be dealt with a doctor. Some random stranger on Craigslist? No. And do I believe his story? Hell no. No, that was not at all what happened. He definitely killed her. Even if it was true, he still killed her. And he still deserves everything that's possibly coming to him. So there will probably be a part 2 to this once they go to trial. But I don't know if he's actually going to go to trial because he confessed to it. So he's probably just going to plead guilty and hopefully get jail for the rest of his life with no parole, because that's what this monster deserves. Alright guys, have a good one. Bye. And P.S. if you see a crazy post on Facebook about on Craigslist about killing yourself, call the